President Trump was briefed, according to NBC News, was briefed by intelligence officials about ongoing Iranian threats to assassinate him, their campaign says. Of course, you got to love the NBC, despite the fact that you've got, like, intelligence officials confirming it's like campaign says.
Yeah.
Got to attribute that to something other than our voice of
They're like,
God.
do we have any reason to believe there may be assassination? I don't think so.
I don't know.
Well, and when Donald Trump was president, I feel like the media had all of these intelligence officials on speed dial to talk about how Donald Trump was a Russian asset and they could confirm anything.
Yeah.
You know, like that's the weirdest thing about the way this is reported, in my opinion.
But clearly there are other actors out there, in this case a state sponsor, that is trying to assassinate Donald Trump, which seems like kind of a big deal. I mean, look, call me old-fashioned. I remember a country where if you were trying to kill a political leader, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, the administration of that current country would literally just blow them up.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Good Thursday to you, and welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. I'm Josh Holmes, along with Comfortably Smug Michael Duncan and John Ashbrook, left to right across your radio dial. A action-packed Thursday episode where we're going to cover an awful lot of things, everything from a new assassination attempt that's been out there to a Senate report on stuff. We've got a great guest today, a Senate candidate, Bernie Moreno in Ohio. A lot of people look past this thing. We've had Bernie on before, absolutely loved him. He's coming back here at the bottom of this show. You're going to absolutely love this interview. This guy, they're saying he's like 52, 50, you know, this is, he's a majority maker. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, things are looking good. The polling is looking great. You got the Ruthless bump from showing up here. And
Yeah.
for folks who missed it first time, you'll want to see this one. And even if you did, always a great guest.
Always a great guest. And then always, we got that Thursday. So we're going to play some King of the Hill.
Yeah.
And we got some variety, good variety today.
Really good.
Really good variety. I have one bone to pick. I wasn't here Tuesday. Thanks for doing that show. Smugglesworth. Vacation.
So here's what happened.
I'm working like fucking 90 hours a week. And this guy's like, oh, he's on vacation.
So we had Kurt show up for a great episode, if you missed it, by the way. And he's like, oh, Holmes isn't here. And I was like, yeah, he's not here. He was like, you guys always like bust each other's balls and say you're on vacation. I was like, you know what, Kurt, I'll do that just for you.
So it was something for our guest.
That's what I always try to do. You know, you want to make the guest
Make people feel
have a good
comfortable.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. My clients all feel the same way. So thanks so much for that. It's awesome. Listen, we're going to get into some serious stuff here off the top. And this is stuff that you really ought to pay attention to because I think it's got ramifications that go well beyond November, which is what everybody's focusing on now. But it might have November implications as well. President Trump was briefed, according to NBC News, was briefed by intelligence officials about ongoing Iranian threats to assassinate him, their campaign says. Of course, you got to love the NBC, despite the fact that you've got like intelligence officials confirming it's like campaign says.
Yeah.
Got to attribute that to something other than our voice of
They're like,
God.
do we have any reason to believe there may be assassination? I don't think so.
I don't know. Yeah, there's not enough out there. But look, we've lived in this world for a long time. We've had people like Mike Pompeo on the show, or Brian Hook on the show. And we've known about, and we've talked about with all of you, Iranian threats against public officials, particularly in the Trump administration, who, you know, if you look at the last, 16 years now, that 4-year period was the worst period for Iran ever.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they bankrupted their entire economy. They made it so they couldn't fund Hezbollah and Hamas. They limited their oil sales. They had all kinds of sanctions upon them. And you contrast that with the Obama administration delivering pallets of cash, and then John Kerry in the Biden administration basically undermining American foreign policy whatsoever by trying to be friends with these people.
Yeah.
Right? So they have a clear Let's there's all kinds of speculation out there. It's like, oh, what's Iran? They're basically just trying to disrupt the American political system. I think the Washington Post said something about this. No, they remember who killed Soleimani.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important for all of our listeners and viewers to hear that once again, that the Obama administration, by sending pallets of cash to Iran, the Biden administration for unfreezing that bank account, and this obsession on the left with working with the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world has emboldened Hamas.
Yes.
Has emboldened Hezbollah to the point where now they're launching ballistic missiles into Tel Aviv. You, American taxpayer, are footing the bill for this, for terrorism.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, consequently, they've had a real opinion on who wins this election, and it is not President Trump, right, who's had a very clear view on this. And according to the news, we put up graphic 1. President Trump was briefed earlier today by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence regarding real and specific threats from Iran to assassinate him in an effort to destabilize and sow chaos in the United States. That was from spokesperson Stephen Chung, a spokesperson from the Trump campaign. So we've since, look, a long article here, but it's confirmed, basically. Spokesperson for the Office of Director of National Intelligence on Tuesday acknowledged there was a briefing but declined to address specific topics. Obviously, you don't do that if you're in the intelligence world. But this has gotten to a point where they're having to brief a presidential nominee a month before an election. That's pretty serious.
For something that's real. Remember in 2016, the entire Russia hoax that the media made up and ran with wall to wall for a solid 6 months. Yeah. And this is one story putting the voice of a spokesman at the top. Trump campaign claims, even though they've had briefings.
It's acknowledged by a spokesperson for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Yeah, I think the dichotomy here shows the media bias in a way that maybe no other story does. Wouldn't you guys agree with that?
I kind of agree, 100%. Yeah.
Well, and when Donald Trump was president, I feel like the media had all of these intelligence officials on speed dial to talk about how Donald Trump was a Russian asset and they could confirm anything.
Yeah.
That's the weirdest thing about the way this is reported, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and the obvious 2 assassination attempts in the course of 3 months, right? And we don't know everything there is to know about both of them at this point, although there's a Senate report that we'll get into about the Butler, Pennsylvania deal that sheds some light on some of it. But clearly there are other actors out there, in this case a state sponsor, that is trying to assassinate Donald Trump, which seems like kind of a big deal. Look, call me old-fashioned. I remember a country where if you were trying to kill a political leader, I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, the administration of that current country would literally just blow them up.
And that's the thing is, like you said earlier, it's very clear who Iran wants to win this election. It's the party that has coddled them, that's literally given them pallets of cash, that has allowed them to get away with whatever they want to do. We had Senator Haggerty on the show, and multiple times he's told the story of how when he was ambassador to Japan, he worked with President Trump to freeze assets to Iran, to make sure that they couldn't sell their oil. And by essentially bankrupting that regime, they could no longer sponsor these terrorists. It's not difficult. If you take away their money, they can't commit terrorism.
Right.
And on the other end of the spectrum,
simple.
you have these administrations. You've got Kamala Harris. All these folks have tried to be like, well, maybe if we give them more money this time, they'll stop. And as soon as the money hits, they're like, time for the biggest terror attack we've done in decades.
But don't you think there's kind of a threshold question here? It goes back to kind of how I was trying to frame this up a little bit, in that the America that I'm most comfortable in, as it faces the world, particularly threats against America, does it in a united fashion. And the idea that the Biden administration, which is now presiding over our entire military, our entire foreign policy and everything, is just sort of a related actor in a story about a state sponsor of terrorism trying to kill a presidential candidate bothers me.
Yeah.
It bothers me a lot because it's like, well, you you can do something about that. And I'm like, to be clear, I'm not accusing them of like, harboring or saying that they're okay with any of this. But like the America that I grew up in, if you did that, I don't care who your presidential target is, that's an America that acts very quickly to try to ensure that those people understand that's the last thing that they should do if they're interested in breathing tomorrow.
In a normal environment, it'd be the sort of situation where like the president stands in the Rose Garden and says like, we will choose a place and time
of our choosing
to respond to this.
Yeah.
And then some things would get blown up.
Yeah.
But like everything that we laid out here at the top of this tells you why that's a difficult thing for the media to do and for the Biden administration to do, is because the Biden administration has coddled the mullahs in Iran from the beginning. It's been part of the left-wing ethos since the Obama administration. Ben Rhodes and all these lunatics who just are so naive about the Middle East. But then like the media can't talk about this as like an America against Iran thing.
Which it is.
Because they're conflicted. They're conflicted because they can't say the Democrats fucked up. And they did. They fucked up. Yep. They supported terrorists. Who would have thought that'd be a bad idea?
Here's the thing. Since, I don't know, the 60s, there's a couple things you can count on from a Democrat in the White House. They are absolutely going to raise your taxes, and they are going to fuck up Iranian foreign policy. You know what I mean? Think about it. Jimmy Carter.
Right.
Had to get fixed by Reagan. All of a sudden, you fast forward all the way to the Obama administration with the pallets of cash and the Iran nuclear deal. Great job on that, by the way. They're now, it's reported, basically have nuclear capabilities. And then this administration, which is just like a continuation of the Obama administration, which Harris is a central part of, they don't understand that these people, when they say, we want to annihilate you, when they say they want to annihilate the state of Israel, when they're talking about your existence in a way that what they'd like to do is get rid of you altogether, they don't take it seriously. They're like, oh, well, what if we open up some trade?
Well, it's because
you know what I mean? It's like
they're not serious people.
Yeah,
they're not serious people. They think they exist in a world separate from us, where they think the West Wing is real life. Like the White House literally just hosted the West Wing crew to commemorate like the 20th anniversary or whatever of that show. That's what their focus is on. Is this show? It's the whole reason that they bungled the foreign policy with the Afghanistan withdrawals, because they wanted to show of like, okay, let's have a parade for September 11th to say Joe Biden's the hero.
Yeah.
And for the photo ops and for this fake illusion of leadership, they're willing to sacrifice Americans. And we're seeing right here a credible threat on the life of Donald Trump. This would be the third assassination attempt, and they're still not taking it serious.
Yeah, well, fortunately, there is a guy running for president who is taking it very seriously, and I know we've got a tweet from President Trump to that effect.
We do. I want to get into that, but I also got one clip that I want to play first, because this also comes from NBC News about something that just sort of passed by my radar, but I think it's critically important to this conversation. Can we play clip 1, please, Spaghetts?
Turning now to a major announcement by Attorney General Merrick Garland this afternoon. The Department of Justice has indicted a Pakistani national who has ties to Iran for allegedly plotting to assassinate government officials on American soil. A senior law enforcement official tells NBC News the former President Trump was one of the potential targets of the foiled plot. According to the indictment unsealed today, Asif Merchant spent time in Iran before traveling to the U.S., where he tried to hire a pair of hitmen to carry out the assassination plot. The hitmen, however, were actually undercover law enforcement officers. Attorney General Garland said today that there is no evidence of any links between this plot and the attempted assassination of the former president last month in Pennsylvania.
That's 3.
Yep.
That's 3. 3 times they've come. This one, direct tie to Iran. Do we ignore that? Like, this is, I can't believe that this, I mean, I remember like years and years ago when Saddam Hussein and others attempted to take out George H.W. Bush. I mean, that was news for like 5 years. This is now settled in between 2 guns on the premises, one with 8 shots fired in the direction of President Trump. And so it's like, well, there's another plot foiled.
And that's the thing is, like Ashbrook said, the media doesn't want to talk about this because it reminds Americans that President Trump took a bullet, jumped up, and said, fight, fight, fight. They don't want that image out there. Even this latest assassination attempt in Florida, every time that something like this has happened, you've seen the media scramble to try to, next story, that's not important. Let's not talk about that.
That's wild, right?
Yeah, they try to turn the page over and over and over again. And what has it gotten us? It's gotten administrations from Democrats who are soft on Iran because the media is more interested in protecting Democrats' election chances than they are in pursuing American dominance over people who are trying to kill us.
Yeah, it used to be the case where if American enemies were trying to attack an American, it didn't matter who that American was, much less a presidential nominee. You know, it was the whole hair on one head of an American, and you're going to have to hear from our entire country. These guys, it's like, well, let's try to bury it in the news. Just unbelievable. So the point that you brought up, Trump's reaction to this in graphic 2, if you don't mind, spaghetti.
It's just incredible.
Big threats on my life by Iran. The entire U.S. military is watching and waiting. Moves were already made by Iran that didn't work out, but they will try again. Not a good situation for anyone. I'm surrounded by more men, guns, and weapons than I ever have been before. Thank you, Congress, for unanimously approving far more money for the Secret Service. 0 no votes, strictly bipartisan. Nice to see Republicans and Democrats get together on something. An attack on a former president is a death wish for the attacker. That is it.
That's the response.
That's leadership.
He just captured the sentiment that I was trying to outline there, which is like, that's his view. That's in America. When he talks about make America great again, what America at its greatest is that sentiment. That it doesn't matter if you are a Republican or you are a Democrat. If you are an American, and if you were a former president of the United States, and a foreign state sponsor of terrorism tries to kill you, you've got all of us to answer to. They don't live by that.
Yeah, and he doesn't just talk the talk, he walks the walk. When Qasem Soleimani was blowing up IEDs to kill and maim U.S. soldiers overseas, Trump took care of that problem
Took care of it real quick. Everybody forgets this. There's one country in the world that in modern days has killed more Americans than anyone else. It's Iran. And the guy who was responsible for that was
he's back in hell now.
Broken into a million pieces and sent straight to Lucifer on a one-way ticket by Donald Trump, which is why they're pissed and why they want a Kamala Harris ticket. And let's not be confused about that.
That's it.
Yeah, Iran hacked the Trump campaign and tried to send all of the information to the Biden campaign.
Yeah.
This is well documented over the last month or so. It is interesting because I remember the sort of posture, when Donald Trump was president and during that campaign in 2016 was, if Vladimir Putin wants Donald Trump in the White House, that's all you need to know of why he's unqualified to be commander in chief.
Right.
Right?
Great point.
This is a hostile foreign actor.
Now that's not the case.
Not hearing that anymore.
Motive's unclear.
Wow.
Motive's unclear.
We may never know Iran's true intentions.
It's a scary situation, but it's one that we got to pay attention to because I do think you got to put that through the whole lens of what's happening here with domestic policy ultimately and how we vote in November. We know how you're voting, the same way we are. When we come back, there is a damning new Senate report on the first assassination attempt on President Trump. It says it was preventable. We'll tell you all about that right after this.
Cyber attacks are on the rise, with corporate megastores falling victim to data breaches that expose your private information. Now these same megastores are lobbying D.C. politicians to pass the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. This bill will leave you even more vulnerable to credit card cyber attacks while Walmart and Target pocket billions in additional profit. Don't let them get away with it. Tell Congress to guard your card because Americans lose when politicians choose. Learn more at guardyourcard.com.
All right, so you've probably seen on the news that the Senate was working on their own investigation after a bunch of testimony from the FBI and whomever in front of Congress that was, let's just say, less than satisfactory. Right? It got the Secret Service director fired after the House testimony. And they did the same in the Senate, equally unsatisfactory. And so they were going to put together their own report. They subpoenaed a whole bunch of documents, went through a bunch of interviews. So according to CBS News, the Senate report details Secret Service failures in response to the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, PA. An interim Senate report identifies planning, communications, and security failures in the U.S. Secret Service's effort during President Trump's July rally that, quote-unquote, directly contributed, quote-unquote, directly contributed to the assassination attempt against him. It's a 94-page report. It was released Wednesday morning, cited nearly a half dozen problems, including a lack of chain of command, poor coordination with state and local law enforcement, inadequate resources and equipment, and a failure to effectively secure a site and ensure the safety of the former president in Butler, PA. I mean, look, that was evident. Mm-hmm. I mean, you didn't need to know more than watching it play out on your TV. The fact that the guy was 100 yards away and nobody knew anything, and somehow there were police surrounding a building that he was on, and the Secret Service didn't know about it. I mean, clearly there was a bunch of stuff. But they put some meat on the bone here. And I think the most important takeaway is every single one of the failures was preventable. That's the quote in the report. Every single one was preventable. A couple of details that came out. Gunman Thomas Crooks had fired 8 rounds from the AR-15 semi-automatic rifle from the roof of an adjacent building before he was killed by a counter-sniper, grazing Trump's left ear, which again was evident, and killing 1 person at the rally and injuring 3 others in July 13. The Senate report says that several Secret Service officials had chronic problems with their radios. In one instance, a Secret Service counter-sniper was offered a local radio to help with communications throughout the day, but he didn't have time to pick it up because he was working on fixing their own Secret Service radio. Due to the failures of radios on site, the special agent in charge gave away his radio to a lead advance agent and went without one for the rest of the day.
I mean, unbelievable. It's like that old Verizon commercial, like, can you hear me now? Like, and think about these people are tasked with protecting the former president of the United States, and they have to worry about stuff like their comms not working. I mean, it's like absurd. It's absurd that is a problem. There's also a quote in here from Rand Paul, which I think like gets to the real heart of it. He said, leaving a roof unattended, just, barely over 100 yards from the podium with a direct line of sight was an unacceptable and inexcusable error. Like comms aside, like all the logistical stuff aside,
site securing,
like literally job number 1, elevated location 100 yards from the former president of the United States. Yeah. Like, how do you not have somebody up there? That, like, I don't do this for a living, and I understand security can be very, very difficult, but I think a lay person would look at that and say, we need a guy up there.
I mean, there's just a lot of stuff going on here. A text message sent by a Secret Service employee to a supervisor an hour before the shooting warned, I'm not getting good comms on either my phone or radio. I'll try to stay on. At the same time, the Secret Service drone units had, quote-unquote, technical problems, so much so that at 4:33 p.m., a Secret Service employee operating the drone system had to call a toll-free helpline.
Come on.
You got to be kidding me.
A toll-free helpline. The report notes that the agent had only 3 months of experience working with that equipment and lacked knowledge about it. There's somebody, first of all.
We got to call the Best Buy Geek Squad to protect the former president?
This is Secret Service. Like, you don't have your own shit? You're going to call a helpline? Like, who answers that thing? They're like,
hey, I'm trying to protect the president. Do you know how it works? Have you tried rebooting your drone? Like,
yeah, do you try turn it on?
Well,
turn it off and
dude,
back on?
I feel for that agent if you've only had, like, a couple months of experience using something like that. Like, why is leadership putting these agents in this position where they're not capable of doing the specific tasks of the job? Like,
and to me, that I think is exactly it. Like, reading all of this, to me, it's less about like, okay, this guy had 3 months or 3 months to practice on this drone, and that this guy was like, okay, well, my comms aren't working. This is supposed to be at the top. You know, your job as the leader
is to make
sure everything is at the minimum, your people have what they need to execute their job.
And it just makes you wonder if competence, experience, and skill set has taken a backseat to things like DEI.
It has to raise the question.
Well, when you see an agent who's like 5'2",
Fumbling around
in front of the podium,
Right.
and Donald Trump is what, like 6'5"?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. What is she blocking?
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a good point. Here's the thing. All of us have had a lot of experience with Secret Service and Cap Police and detail protection. And in my experience, I can't think of a single person who wasn't incredible at their job. But then you look at what happened in Butler and you look at the scene on the stage and all of that. That's not what my experience was at all.
Right.
Like seeing all of that play out, it's like, what is that? It was a
Right.
foreign concept to me. I'm like, who is that? How is that person
Right.
ever passing a basic training test?
Right, exactly. There are circumstances when a 5'2" person just won't work. You need a 6'6" person. And I mean, like, nobody's attacking the service members who are, like, putting their lives on the line. Imagine if
They're put in that situation.
Imagine if he got shot over the head of a 5'2" person. They would never forget that
How
day
do you
for the
answer that
rest
question?
of their life.
Exactly. So the preliminary...
Don't put somebody in that situation.
And that's what they did. The preliminary report also found that Secret Service personnel were notified about a suspicious person with a rangefinder 27 minutes before the shooting. 27 minutes before the shooting. But the lead service agent and other site officials told the panel they did not receive the information. So, was that on one of the broken radios? Like what?
Oh, just standard. Everybody brings a rangefinder to a rally.
Another alert about
Nothing to see there.
about an individual on the roof of the building was sent by radio from local law enforcement to the Secret Service 2 minutes before the shooting. This was followed by another alert that the individual was armed, but the message was, quote unquote, not relayed to key Secret Service personnel. So, like, again, it raises more questions, right? This is a preliminary report. They're going to have more, but, like, who's it relayed to? They said it was not relayed. They said they relayed it, and it didn't relay to the key Secret Service. So who gets it? Is it like a call center in Bangkok?
That's the thing. It's like,
I mean,
again, like Ashbrook's also been saying, this goes down. This is at the top of the food chain. It's the person who's in charge who should be making sure that their people are not put in a position where they all feel helpless. Because this is like, what is it, 7 different failures that they outlined? The buck stops at the guy in charge. So whoever that is needs to make sure that their people have everything they need to do their job. And it seems like that was not at all the case.
This is another thing. A counter sniper who was interviewed by the panel described seeing local law enforcement running towards the building where Crooks was positioned with guns drawn. But he did not alert Trump's protective detail because it, quote, did not cross his mind, unquote,
Wow.
to notify somebody to get Trump off the stage. Wait, again, you're going back to like the basic training here. Like, we've all been part of events. There was a ton of them when I first got started in politics where we had events where like President Bush would show up in a post 9/11 posture, that the event would be like an hour late or like 2 hours late. And it wasn't because Bush wasn't there. It was because something had notified. Some Secret Service component to the day had created a situation where they needed to run it to ground before they ever let a president on stage. This is the opposite of that. They're like, I'd never even crossed my mind that we had guns drawn on a building. I mean, what the
Right.
It's just, it's crazy.
So this part to me, just real quick, it says, according to the report, counter-sniper teams were dispatched to Butler following, quote, credible intelligence of a threat, marking the first time this type of team was deployed. So, like, if they hadn't had that, they wouldn't even had the counter-sniper team that took this idiot down. It says, however, nearly all the Secret Service personnel that spoke to the committee said they were unaware of the potential threat. One said, quote, why am I hearing about threats on TV? An agent wrote in a note after the shooting that was included in the report.
So, for context, the clip that we played at the end of the last segment was what they're talking about. That Iranian threat where a Pakistani was arrested attempting to get hitmen, basically, to assassinate President Trump. And there's some elements, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's some things that you've read that make it seem like it was Pennsylvania-based. And so that's what they're talking about deploying counter sniper teams, apparently for the first time. Amazingly that's the case. And none of the people knew about that?
And here's the thing. It's like we've been saying over and over. Members of the Secret Service advance team were also denied initial resources, according to the report, and, quote, could not identify who had final decision-making authority for the event. They didn't even know who was in charge.
So Blumenthal, who runs this committee, is the Democrat who's got his own set of ideological issues that we'll take issue with at another time because he's actually done a pretty good job here, says it was really truth being stranger than fiction of what they found out. Like, no way it could be as bad as it actually looked. They found out it was worse. I mean, yikes. So, look, you go through all of this stuff. What does it all mean? I mean, there's a third assassination attempt that was foiled that we didn't even know about. You've got the two ones that everybody now knows about. You know of an ongoing threat from Iran. What does this mean for the campaign? Mm-hmm. Like you said, Duncan, in 2016, we were all led to believe that Putin wanted Trump. Mm-hmm. And that was a vote for America was a vote against Trump because you didn't want to support. The media has done their level best to try to brush all this stuff under the rug. They want to make it seem like motives unclear for Iran and their preference. And yet these assassination attempts are playing out before our very eyes. So it's our question of the day for you all. And this is the one I'm interested because I'd like to believe there are more Americans that are like us than there are like them who think an attack on any of us is an attack on all of us and we're ready to do business. What do you think this means for the context of this campaign? What impact will this have? Is Trump at a disadvantage, for example, because he has to now travel with this massive security detail and it limits the venues that he can go to? Or is it such that people have concluded if one of America's enemies has a clear preference in this campaign, that's enough for me?
Yeah, right. It's like, you want to find out who's going to put America first? It's the one that the terrorists are trying to kill.
Yeah.
It's a badge of honor.
So remember, you got to like and subscribe. Like and subscribe if you want more people to hear this, which I know you do. You can doing a great job, by the way. We're getting downloads like crazy.
Yeah.
We
love to see it.
We love to see it. So keep doing that. Tell your friends to keep doing that. Like and subscribe. Doesn't cost you a damn thing. And then answer this question. And we're going to read through it, and we'll get back to you next Tuesday on all of that. And when we come back, we will be discussing your comments from last Tuesday's episode. Mm-hmm. After this.
Folks, let me tell you about my friends at Americans for Prosperity, America's largest grassroots organization. Americans for Prosperity is out there every day fighting for you. Their goal, reignite the American dream. AFP's priorities are simple: secure the border, end inflation, make energy more affordable. And AFP gets results the old-fashioned way, through grassroots activism. They bring together like-minded conservatives, turning them into a grassroots army, and defeating the left's terrible big government agenda in the states and in Washington. And that's where you come in. With the media, celebrities, and universities stacked against us, it's the grassroots that will help us win. So please find an Americans for Prosperity chapter in your state and get in the fight. Go to americansforprosperity.org.
Okay, we're going to get into all your comments. Like and subscribe.
If you wish to opine.
You wish to opine, and to do that, we always go to the voice first. What do we got today?
First one comes from Chad Martin, and Chad writes, the campaign has been nothing more than a beta test on how much the Dems can get away with in a presidential election moving forward. Putting forward a non-leader with a densified campaign to match this modern era of densified news cycle will inform a 2028 Mayor Pete or Gavin Newsom. This joyous and shallow campaign vibe will wear off sooner than they may have anticipated, given the harsh realities the electorate faces, which will ultimately motivate Trump voters even more.
Yeah.
Chad Martin, thank you.
Really good. As an aside, by the way, so I flew back to my home state of Minnesota for a funeral Monday, which is why I wasn't here. And there was a plane a United plane that had all kinds of like Secret Service cars. It was local cops and then Suburbans and Secret Service and all that stuff. And all the people in the bar I was sitting at, which is what one does at an airport.
Yeah.
You know, you enjoy yourself. Had great conversations. But everybody was pressed up against the glass because they thought somebody was going to get arrested or something. They're like, I can't wait to watch a perp like get dragged out of there. But then I started counting the cars, and it was like your classic detail operation. I was like, you guys are all going to be disappointed. You're like either congressional leadership or a cabinet secretary. And they're like, I don't know, man. I think someone's going to get arrested. And they're just sitting there, and all the people, the gates next to us, all the people are just waiting to board. And they're just waiting. They're just sitting there waiting. And it's like past the time that they're supposed to board. And all of a sudden, a door flips open on one of the Suburbans. Mayor Pete.
You're kidding me.
Mayor
Pete?
Yeah.
Holding up the entire airport so that he can walk out?
Not
Are
o-
you kidding me?
Not only that,
To
but
do
he's-
what?
He's like huffing his bags like Willie Loman. And it gave me two things. Like, one, he was delaying everything, and that's ridiculous. But two, remember when he got in all the trouble about the private planes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like taking like DOT Gulfstreams to go see his movie premiere and shit like that.
Yeah.
So they're now in a situation in the election window where the guy's flying United. And he's like just sitting there, you know, and like everybody's kind of waiting for Mayor Pete. It's just like a hopelessly pathetic figure to walk across the tarmac and haul his bags up. I mean, I laughed so hard.
Guy ruins
I want
everything.
look. I mean, considering what he's done to America's transportation infrastructure, he deserves all of the pain that we all have to deal with.
He should have to fly standby
Yeah.
on a timed out flight.
Middle seat,
Yeah.
back of the plane, right by the toilet.
Yeah, bitch by the toilet. That's exactly where he should go.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was glad to see it.
I love it.
Comment 2, Duncan. What do we got?
This one from Liberty or Death. Kamala is the story of the, quote, girl from the bodega who visits Washington. No way she's coming back. Most people don't pay attention to politics until it hits them in their pocketbook. Every day, people across the nation have been hit over and over again for years, and they're about to hit back at the polls Trump 2024.
Look, I think Liberty and Death has it nailed here, and it's the one part of the conversation that Democrats and the media don't seem to get. The economic impact that people have had by virtue of a Kamala Harris, Joe Biden administration is something they blow by. She's like, oh, what kind of plans does she have? Well, we've seen the plans for the last 4 years. How did that work out? I mean, this is exactly right. It's like you get beat down long enough, you're going to want to go back to what it was like when you weren't getting beat down every day. All right, comment 3. What do we got, Smug?
This is from friend of the program, Horse Sense.
Oh, I love Horse
Yep.
Sense.
Horse Sense writes,
Great guy.
she's already captured the momentum with the IRS endorsement. Everyone likes the IRS. The polls haven't caught up to this momentous endorsement. Expect her to skyrocket in the polls by the end of the week.
That's so good. Because that kind of flew past our radar, too. Anytime the IRS is making an endorsement,
Yeah.
you probably should go the other way on it.
How is that even legal?
I don't know.
How does I thought they're supposed to be like collecting tax? I mean, how does the IRS have an endorsement?
It gets even worse. It was the union
Oh, right.
at the IRS.
Right, it was their
And, like,
employee union.
So the IRS is unionized. Like,
and
it's
who are they?
unbelievable.
They're negotiating against the people they're collecting taxes from?
Yeah.
Is that who?
Yeah,
is that
but
the
they're doing
setup?
it in a very bipartisan, nonpartisan
sure.
way.
I'm sure.
The IRS employees who've made a hard endorsement in the presidential election have absolutely no interest in, let's say, auditing a conservative. We know that.
Yes.
We know that. God, what a just crooked operation. Great comment from Horse Sense. Thank you for all your comments. Like I said, we read every single one of them, particularly interested in what you have to say about our topic at the top one that we'll read next Tuesday. We're the hardest working people in show business.
Yes.
No question about it.
Without a doubt.
And to that effect, the gentleman at the right side, as you're looking at our cameras, you guys did something last night.
We did. AFP invited us to an event. I won't spoil all of it. I'll save some of it for the interview, and it'll all be described. But like, I'm in a tux. We're in tuxes.
I mean,
which is a rare thing.
but
for
look
me.
at you. You followed that up by putting a suit and tie.
Well, I
on.
had Fox I had Fox
Oh,
News
he's a
today.
big show. He's
with,
a big show guy now.
Dana Perino.
Big deal.
Yeah, he's a big deal.
Thank you, Dana.
Yeah.
I'm a big guy now.
Yeah, no, he's a big
deal.
guy. Like people want him.
Yeah.
Tuxedos and suits.
But it's just like it was weird, like being at this AFP event, because most of the time when you're introduced to AFP or working in politics and the name AFP comes up, it's like at Iowa at the state fair. You're
Yeah, it's the real ground game, folks. They got
right.
they had shorts
Right.
and tees on, and they're just hitting as many doors
Yeah.
as they can.
Yeah.
And now you got tuxedos.
Yeah. So a rare occurrence for the digital guy, but we had an absolutely fantastic time. Thanks for inviting us. I think you're going to love that interview.
Let's go to it.
I want to welcome to the program great friends of the program, Emily Seidel, Brent Gardner, AFP. We are here tonight for a lovely event. I got to say, crazy you invited us. We are campaign guys at heart. Guys who've been out in the field for our entire career. People who are usually behind a computer like me, the digital guy. Right. You're lucky I'm wearing pants tonight. And I'm all fancy up here in this tuxedo. And when I think of AFP, I think of phone banks. I think of wearing jeans and knocking doors. So what is it that we're celebrating here tonight?
Well, we're tricking everybody. We're actually going door knocking right after this. Good thing you have comfortable shoes on.
Yeah, right.
No, we're celebrating 20 years of Americans for Prosperity. We've been celebrating all year. We had a big celebration out in Pittsburgh with our entire staff a couple of months ago, and then we went door knocking for McCormick out there. But here tonight, we're celebrating 20 years of working with tremendous partners in Washington, D.C. to get good policy passed and stop really bad ideas in our nation's capital.
Yeah, well, 20 years is a very long time. I'm wondering if you can tell people how you got here.
Well, it's a long journey. I'm too old. I mean, too young, rather, to have known at the beginning. I'm just kidding. No, we started as a startup, right? And you know how many startups actually fail? What percentage?
Most of them.
A lot.
89%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it took a lot of bootstraps, sort of grit and scrappiness at the beginning to even prove that we could organize people and have an impact on public policy at the local level. And then, from there, if you look back 20 years ago, I mean, just think about where the country was 20 years ago. First of all, Tiger Woods, I think, had just won his first PGA tournament. Mm-hmm. Shrek 2 was the box office blockbuster. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if your kids watch that.
Yeah, yeah.
Howard Dean was doing
Howard Dean was doing a scream.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a long time ago, and if you look at what was happening in politics, the left was way better at the right at organizing people, driving public policy, turning people out to vote. And if you were a limited government, sort of freedom-oriented person, you kind of felt alone, you felt outgunned. And our benefactors at the beginning, they looked around at that environment and they said, we should do something. And then they looked at Washington, D.C. and they said, well, there's a lot of good people working in think tanks, but it seems like we need a do tank. And that was the beginning of AFP.
Yeah, politics goes to those who show up.
That's
is
amen.
the famous saying,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Well, not only do you still exist now 20 years later, but you've grown a ton and you've succeeded a ton. Tell us about that.
Well, you want to talk about some of our best policy wins?
Yeah, I mean, listen, so much of our success has not just only occurred here in D.C., but really, across the country in state capitals. I think just the last couple of years, seeing the expanse of education freedom has been really impressive. There have been wins on labor fights over the years. We've seen all kinds of opportunities at the federal level, like the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which obviously we're going to revisit when we get to next year. But I think across this country, so many of the great victories and so much of the great momentum that we've seen around issues that have really taken regions or taken a lot of different states by storm have been at the behest of a lot of the AFP activists and folks that have worked hard on those issues.
Yeah, in education, labor, low taxes.
Correct.
I'm sure we're going to hear about those tonight.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about what we're going to hear tonight on those topics.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're excited. I think this is a great opportunity to mark what 20 years has meant, which has been saving taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars, focused on spending fights, ensuring that the growth of government is restricted. I think if we look at tax fights, I mean, those are the kind of things that are fought in state capitals and here in Washington, D.C. almost every year. And it's, you talked about politics being about showing up. It's also about getting up early and staying up later. And I think those are the things that make a difference, whether you're talking about a startup like AFP or a startup in a business. It's about really dedicated folks. So, we've taken the model that allowed us to be successful in so many of those tax fights, in those spending fights, in those education fights, and we've improved on that model. And I think that's why so many folks look at AFP as the right platform to go out there and engage on these issues. And we know that just in front of us, we've got a whole bunch more of those fights.
Tonight we're going to celebrate 300 total policy wins in the last year, which
incredible.
is huge across the country. You mentioned education. 61 of those were education-specific policy fights. Parents out there are fired up about helping their kids have an individualized education, something that helps them discover and develop their own unique gifts. Every child is different. 61 of those wins across 25 states is transforming the future for the next generation.
And God bless you for doing it. It's incredible, incredible work. Been in DC for a while now, and what I've seen is organizations come and go, rise and fall with administrations or with movements, and AFP has had that staying power here over this last 20 years. I'm wondering, what have you learned in the last 20 years?
Well, we've learned a lot of things. The biggest one, quite frankly, is that you need to know what you stand for. You're going to hear a lot about that tonight. You need to understand why you do what you do, the principles that guide you.
There's a lot of weather vanes out there.
That's right. That's right. And so you got to point towards that North Star at all times, no matter what. And sometimes that's really hard, especially in Washington, D.C. But that's the biggest thing. If you stand for your principles, no matter what, it sets you apart from what other people might be doing out there. And that attracts people who are attracted to those principles, who want to stand for them. One of the other things that we've learned, and a big reason why we're having this celebration tonight, is that we need tremendous partners to fight for freedom. You can't do it on your own. But I think one of the things that we want to make sure shines through in the conversations that we have with our partners here in Washington, D.C., is that what powers our movement, the people who are behind every win, every major campaign across the country, are just the voices of the American people. I mean, everyday grassroots activists, that's who we are. That's what powers what we do. And we've learned that makes us unique in the marketplace. There's nobody else that can knock on the quantity of doors, host the kinds of events that we do across the country, the grassroots rallies, make the phone calls into races and into members' offices that we hear a lot of complaining about sometimes. And that's really what drives our success.
Yeah, you mentioned knocking on doors. There's obviously a very big election that's about a month away. And I wonder if you could tell people what you guys are doing. I know you're spread out all over the country trying to make sure that the right people are in office next year.
Yeah. So between AFP and AFP Action, we're engaged in over 600 races, which is our high water mark. We've never done that much. We've knocked 17 million doors so far, 14 million phone calls. We got started very early. We also did a ton of candidate recruitment, and so we recruited 135 candidates in about 27 states, I think. And all of that is so important because, if you want to get better policies passed to help people live the American dream, you need to have the right people win elections, and that oftentimes means you need the right candidates running for office in the first place. And so we're kind of moving backwards in the timeline of politics to get involved earlier and earlier every single cycle to try to help people who want to be elected to advance these principles, be successful at doing so. But you're right, it is, this election is coming up pretty fast.
Yeah, but getting people elected is only part of that equation, right? You get them elected, great. Then you got to hold them accountable. And that's what AFP does best. It's public choice economics. Politicians respond to incentives just like everybody does in a marketplace, right? So 2025, what does that look like? What are the challenges, opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, look, we want good politics, good policy to be good politics. And I think to do that, we've started engaging folks at the local level very early on. We've talked about the issues that are going to matter. We talked earlier about the fiscal cliff that's going to be a big issue next year. Government overreach is something that still remains strongly in people's minds coming out of the pandemic. So looking at ways where the administrative state continues to grow and restrict the ability for for families and for individuals to start businesses and to be able to grow their careers. I think those are a big part of it. But look, what does accountability look like? The great thing about AFP is that persistence also makes a difference. You know, it's showing up. It's also not going away. I think when you have a set of
Squeaky wheel gets the grease.
It sure does.
You know, I mean, this is politics.
And so, you know, the same kind of folks who are working so hard in elections, they don't go away once the elections are over. 365 days a year, they're engaged in the process. They're building relationships. They're making phone calls. Those phone calls, you know, in those instances are going to be to push for the kinds of policies that allow this country to be able to get back on track. And so, you know, we're going to be active in all the types of grassroots that have led to the policy successes we've been talking so far today. And so it'll be phone calls, it'll be knocking on doors, but we'll be doing it to try and get the kind of policies that are going to allow the American people, I think, to enjoy the promise of prosperity that's owed to them.
Okay, so that's 2025.
Yeah.
You guys have been around for 20 years. I'm wondering if you could just big picture with us, tell us, what do you envision for the next 20 years?
Well, top line, we want good policy to win with the American people, win at the ballot box, and win in the halls of Congress. And to do that, we need to show up in a number of different ways. We recently opened about a year ago actually, opened a permanent office on Capitol Hill called the Freedom Embassy. It's a place for people to collaborate across this movement to figure out the right strategies and put together the right campaigns to get all of this done. And that's going to be the home for these ideas for the next 20 years. It's a big part of what we're doing.
It's a great spot, stocked with a lot of very friendly people.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, for us to have that local proximity close to the Capitol, where members of Congress, we're going to have about a little over 24 of them here tonight, can go and work closely with our policy partners, with policy experts, some of the smartest folks across the country on solving some of the challenges that we'll see in the next 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this or you're watching this, you know what Election Day is, right? Like, you got that date circled in your calendar. But people like AFP make sure every other date also matters for these legislators and for their members. Nobody in the game does it better than y'all. If people want to get involved, what do they do?
Go to americansforprosperity.org.
Okay.
We've got state chapters across the country. You can get involved at the state level. And then, of course, we've got all of our federal campaigns as well, and you can have your voice heard by your senator and your congressman.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks for having us tonight.
Thanks for being here.
Come on, guys.
Don't get too rowdy. Yeah. Just kidding. Actually, I want you to get rowdy.
I will.
Okay.
I will do that.
Great interview, fellas. I hope you had the time of your lives.
We had a good time.
Yeah, and I mean, there were a lot of people there. A lot of, like, Speaker Johnson was there.
Yep.
And there were a ton of lawmakers other than him. I think Senator Barrasso was there.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, and
20 years they've been around.
20
as you
years, and
heard.
they also invited, like, part of the program is they invited, like, all of their top activists from across the country.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
a lot of these battleground states.
Rewarding them on the big stage.
Right.
Yeah.
And being like, you're not just out there, you know, making the phone calls and knocking the doors and nobody notices. Like,
That's awesome.
you know, so that it was nice.
Well, I mean, the reason that we can do all of this is we have great sponsors, fellas. We got great sponsors. And one of those great sponsors is Lumen. What is Lumen? Smug.
Smug has it.
The biggest purveyor of our Lumen amongst all of us. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, so Lumen is this wonderful, easy to use device, and I do stress easy to use. You wake up in the morning, you breathe right into it, and it tells you, okay, here's what your body's doing. Is it burning fat? Is it burning carbohydrates? And then it tells you what to do. You don't have to, it doesn't say like, okay, here's your HRV, and now I have to go Wikipedia what HRV is to make a decision. This tells you, it's like, okay, here's what you should do for the rest of the day. This is what you should eat. Here's what you should eat. It makes all the decisions for you. It's like the easiest to use thing.
Well, and because your metabolism, sorry, I was struggling with that. It's been a long week already. Been a long couple months, to be honest with you. Because your metabolism is the center of everything you do, once you understand that, it allows you to optimize your health, right?
100%. And you notice the benefits very quickly. I mean, you get better sleep. It's simple. It makes all the decisions for you. You don't have to worry about what do I need to do with this info. It tells you what to do. You'll feel better. You get in better health. And it's just, you don't have to take part in making any of the planning. It's all there.
Yeah, and if you're like really busy and maybe you don't have time to do some sort of like strict meal plan or meal delivery service.
Like
or,
any of us working in this environment.
And you travel a lot
Yeah.
and stuff, and like, you're eating bad sometimes at an airport bar, as I'm sure you were last night, Holmes, or something like that. It's just like, it's helpful to have something that it works so seamlessly that you don't have to do a ton of like.
If I would have blown,
production.
blown in that thing this morning, it would have slapped me.
Yeah,
It would have slapped me.
you are burning only like alcohol sugars.
You are a bad human. But anyway, so if you want to take the next step in improving your health, you go to lumen.me/ruthless to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/ruthless for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right, so boys, King of the Hill.
Yes.
Whoo, boy.
Yeah, I got the defending champion.
Yeah.
Radio Free Tom.
Radio Free Tom put together something I would say was a little bit of a rigged decision.
Okay.
But I was a part of the bailiff and law and ordering, so I can't complain too much.
What? Sounds
But
like a
now-
complaint, though.
No, but now I'm the judge and jury.
That's right. No judge, no
Fairest-
jury has ever
fairest.
been more fair.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that from my my fellow colleague, and I understand that.
I have the challenger today, and I'm bringing Cherry my cherry.
Oh, wow.
Cherry Jacobus.
It's always something when we get
Yeah.
these two in the
Yeah,
show.
old
Just
school.
remember the way the King of the Hill works is you could take people who sort of self-fashioned themselves as quote-unquote conservatives over a bunch of years, who in the era of Trump lost their damn minds. And what they say is actually crazier than anything you hear out of the lunatic left. I mean, they've just become insane. So we all pick competitors, and I'd like to see some updated stats on how we're all doing, but I feel like this is, we're in like a 7th generation King of the Hill at this point.
Yeah, this is the marquee game of the Ruthless Variety Program. And
It
to start
is.
it off, we always go ringside.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please. It's time for King of the Hill. In the red corner, fighting from her own Twitter account for a chance to reclaim her crown, Kami Cherry Jacobus. And now, in the blue corner, fighting from the Atlantic magazine, the champion, Radio Free Tom Nichols.
I love it. Okay, as judge and jury, I will instruct that the champion is first.
Okay. Spaghetti, can we put up exhibit number 4, please? Just go ahead and play that hot fire right at the top here. This is Tom Nichols. He's quote tweeting this, random account that has like a laundry list. I don't want to get. I know the rules of King of the Hill. I can't go through the whole thing, but let's suffice it to say, it's a very
Negative.
No. It's a very rosy opinion of what the Biden. Harris last 4 years has been talking about how low inflation is. Jobs are plentiful.
Oh, God.
Literally saying jobs are plentiful.
Saying that
Hilarious.
crime is down.
Yeah, so just a hilarious thing. He quote tweets that and says, "How can anyone resist the appeal of fascism with this carnage?" Sort of being sarcastic. Which is, I mean, like, you don't have to take it from anyone here on the show. You could just look at the chairman of the Federal Reserve's press conference from 2 weeks ago, where he's like, all this illegal immigration is ruining our job market.
Yeah, we're going to have to fundamentally disrupt the economy to try to get it back on track.
Right. Don't take it from us. I mean,
It tells you something about the information silo that this man lives in.
incredible.
Where it was like, yes, all those things are true, and it's up against fascism.
Right.
Fantastic. All right, what do we got from the challenger?
Okay, Spaghettis, let's put up exhibit number 9. Also, a random account that Cherry Jacobus is responding to. This account claims to have founded this country, and it was viewed by 200 people. One of those people was Cherry Jacobus, who felt compelled
Amazing.
to correct the record that this random bot account did not, in fact, found the country. So what it is, fellas, demonstration of Cherry's time and how she values her time to correct the record from random bots out there in the internet who are seen by 200 people.
I do love the fact that she's one of 200 replies.
No, 200 people who saw it.
200 viewers.
One reply.
And I think that's testimony to the Elon customized stuff. At this point, they're just selling her stuff that just gets her going, right? I mean, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like the algorithm is really personalized just for her brainworms.
Yeah.
And I do respect like a commitment to the game, to like go into the replies of a rando like avatar, like frog meme account and be like, not so fast, Buster. You know what I mean? Like that is an incredible commitment to the posting game. I just don't think it can match up against fascism.
A very generous move by a fellow competitor, adding to the context of his competitor's tweet.
He's a gentleman.
Look, I appreciate more than winning the game. I respect the game.
For that reason, you, Duncan, win round one.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
For that reason.
Thank you.
And that reason. Let's go to round 2 and let's hear from the challenger.
Okay, round 2, Spaghettis, let's put up exhibit number 6. Okay, Cherry Jacobus is quote tweeting some random somebody I've never heard of talking about Melania Trump. Okay. And Cherry Jacobus says Melania's nude modeling was softcore porn, not, in all caps, art. Cliff slices and dices her, and she deserves it. But he also threw in a clip of warbling Laura Trump, for which he should not be forgiven. We do not deserve that, Cliff.
Wait.
I have no idea what she's talking about. She's an absolute lunatic. She's lost her mind.
Bailiff, can we get some... Do we know who Cliff is?
So Cliff is some random who's attacking Melania because that video that Melania put out being like, this is nude modeling, and then it also
we talked about it on Megyn Kelly's show, I think, about.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Well, and then he spliced that with, a clip of Laura Trump in there. And then this is Sherry succumbing to the brainworms and having an episode.
Again, a random...
Total random
thing. And Melania's nude model, which, by the way, dude, we haven't covered because this was last Thursday, and I wasn't here on I don't know if you guys talked about this, but the fact that Megyn brought up the nude model, expecting us to comment on something like that.
Yeah, she does it on purpose.
She's done it deliberately.
She done it deliberate. She knows it.
I mean, we're...
What are you supposed to say?
Fellas in a situation like that. What more can be said? There's nothing we can do about that. Okay, that's a pretty terrific entry. What do we got from the champion?
Okay, I'm in a pickle, a quandary, a predicament.
Ooh, okay,
because I got a lot to play here.
Okay, these decisions are hard.
Okay, we're gonna go with exhibit number 2, spaghetti. So National Review, they do these cartoons on their website. And I don't know if you guys followed any of the stuff after. Remember the pagers? Yeah. All of the terrorist pagers that Israel had hacked to blow them up or whatever. Apparently somebody in requisition in these terrorist organizations did a bulk order discount. Somewhere in the supply chain, Israel was like, "Oh, I know what to do with those." Yeah, which is just
you're looking
awesome.
for a better deal, are you?
Oh,
we can give you a better deal.
But they put up this cartoon, and it's a Rashida Tlaib at her congressional desk, and her beeper explodes.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Tom Nichols, he's not too pleased with that. He must rise to the defense of Rashida Tlaib.
As a true conservative
As a true conservative does. You wake up every day and you grind to defend the honor of your political opponents and terrorists. I have never said one good thing about Tlaib and many critical things. On the other hand, she is an American and a member of Congress. And WTF is NRO even thinking running this? Well, I would clarify things for Tom Nichols that, this is a person who deserves zero defense, who, supports the people who defend Hamas and Hezbollah. And not only that, I don't know if you guys followed this, in Michigan, the attorney general there, just filed charges on some of those like terrorist sympathizing college campus protesters who broke the law. And there's like a chain of evidence here for them to bring all of these charges. And Tlaib decides to pipe up about the thing and talk about how this attorney general couldn't be unbiased in this case. You want to know why?
I bet I can guess.
Because the attorney general of Michigan is a Jewish woman.
Oh my! What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
Bailiff, can I get a ruling on whether that piece of information is admissible here in this court?
I mean, I think it's important context.
I think it provides context. Because when you're discussing a figure like Rashida Tlaib and a political cartoon, I think knowing kind of like some of the background would help provide context to understanding it.
I mean, that is
thoughtful, smug.
Incredible.
That's insane.
That's an incredible. I'm going to have to take one more look. Can we get Smash's tweet back up there from Sherry?
Yeah.
Because I was very prepared to go with Sherry, but that is a well played round.
Number 6, Baguettes.
That was good evidence introduced.
No context is necessary here because Sherry Jacobus is dunking on Melania and dunking on Lara Trump and writing in all caps that we do not deserve that cliff.
Calling it porn is so insane.
Dude, I can't. It was such a well played round. I had to go back to the ticker for it all. But this is going to go to Sherry.
I can't disagree with this court. It's an amazing take. I think the only thing missing from it, and I understand you can't play it in the game, but I would love to see all the replies of liberal women supporting women to come to Melania's defense. I'm sure they're in there in those replies.
I'm sure now.
Body positive, sex positive, feminists.
Well, you got Kamala out there like she wants to legalize sex work. At this point, which I feel like should be the top of her platform. If she's actually interested in getting middle America votes.
Yeah.
Nothing else makes sense. Okay. What do we got?
Final round here. I got to play a banger. I got to do it.
I would have thought he set this up.
Spaghettis. I'm going to need exhibit number 1.
Ooh. Numero uno.
Okay, so this is a quote tweet of Aaron Rupar.
And which he follows
just
regularly.
I'm not going to belabor the point, but like Radio Free Tom, the man loves his quote tweets, and he quote tweets some of the most lunatic accounts on Twitter.
Which, this is a dude, if you're, like, for your average listener who's not on X, if you're following and interacting with Aaron Rupar,
you've made a lot of poor decisions.
There's a brain worm activity that is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Can we get that back up?
Yeah, can we put that back up? All right, so Radio Free Tom quote tweets and said the Aaron Rupar thing is, Trump claims while he was president, foreign countries wouldn't start fights or wars or whatever.
Yeah.
And Radio Free Tom quote tweets it and says, "This is untrue and also completely nuts." And it will go largely unremarked because Kamala Harris hasn't released enough detail on how she'll change the Pentagon acquisition budget for fiscal year 2027.
That's the only thing people are wanting.
Look, my vote goes in a TPS report. I have to see it.
Yeah, which is this is
if
like
Booz Allen doesn't sign off, I'm out of here.
The thing I love about it is it's doing so much work. I mean, he could work at the DNC because, like, number one, you have to totally like memory hole all the incredible work the Trump administration did.
Seriously, their foreign policy was unbelievable. They brought peace to the Middle East.
In the Middle East, the Abraham Accords, not to mention, I don't know, Russia wasn't invading Ukraine during Donald Trump's presidency.
No, it's all pretty self-evident.
It's also pretty, yeah. And then at the same time, and this is really the sleight of hand, is to like use this like Pentagon acquisition budget.
What the hell is that?
What he's doing there is he's trying to like minimize. He's minimizing all of the Kamala Harris radical left-wing stuff that she did in 2019. Decriminalize border crossings.
Well, no, it's care about my thing.
Yeah,
it's care about my thing. And you see a lot of like intellectual, like quote unquote intellectual. I don't mean real intellectual, but intellectual, like self-serving punditry. That is, they have one beat.
Yeah,
and this guy, foreign wars are his beat. That's
but I
his
think,
thing.
but I think his thing also in this is like he's trying to act like because Kamala hasn't done enough details in her policy proposals.
Yeah.
That's the reason the media is complaining, not the fact that she's flip-flopped on fracking, on border,
I think you're short. I think you're
amnesty and all that.
shortchanging yourself. I think it's even worse.
You think he just loves the Pentagon budget?
I think he
does.
She doesn't get my vote until I see how many missiles and what company that currently supports my shitty academia is being funded. I mean, I think it's that bad.
It might be.
Allegedly. We'll see. We're laughing. It's all sad.
The craziest part is we just don't know. It could be either.
It could be either, but I love that.
I would bet you're
that
right
take.
on that.
I might be right on it. If I'm right, that's unbelievable. All right, what do we got, Smash?
Okay, Spaghettis, let's pull up exhibit number 7. Jerry Jacobus evidently has a podcast of her own, and she quote tweets a link to that podcast where she did a conversation with a left-wing radio lunatic. And remember, this is someone who claimed to have been a conservative or a Republican at some point in her career. And she asks the left-wing lunatic, would MAGA cult forgive Trump treason? He says yes. Days after speaking with Putin, Trump asked DNI to give him a list of our spies. Soon, our spies, assets, and informants around the globe were exposed, captured, and killed.
Wait, what's she talking about?
This is absolute nonsense.
Dude, she's been on this since 2015. Like
This is Russiagate on steroids. She is suggesting that President Trump met with Putin,
outed,
and in exchange for something in the conversation that he gave up a bunch of American spooks out there to be off by the Russians.
She's like tough. She's the last Japanese soldier fighting on the island after World War II 30 years later. It's incredible.
It's the most lunatic take I've ever heard in my entire life that a former conservative did with a left-wing radio host, and for that reason, I really think that I should win round 3.
Wow.
What
Look at that.
Man of the robe to do? These are two just hot fire.
Is that take actionable to have her like committed? Because this is like
I do
the
love
game has become like mental health concern.
I do love the idea that Sherry, like that there's still juice left to squeeze on the Russiagate. Like she's the only one left being like,
that is true.
You will go, because it's not just her podcast, and I know I'm helping my opponent here, but I don't care because it's great content.
We won one round for it, so you might as well.
But like she didn't just link to her podcast; she linked to her Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a donor funded podcast model. So like not only does she think she could get listeners,
imagine being someone who's like, yeah, I'm gonna fund Sherry Jacobus.
She's got
podcast.
You know what? Robert Mueller, all this impeachment stuff, they didn't get to the bottom of it because they didn't try hard enough. You know what? Sherry, she's getting to the bottom of that.
Yeah, no, she was calling out Merrick very early for not throwing them all in jail.
Your Honor, could I please place the exhibit back up just one more time?
Oh,
so
he
you
didn't
can
feel like
see
he got enough.
I just want
I'm going to ask the bailiff what he thinks.
Just one last time.
Okay.
Briefly.
Okay. Unfortunately, the exhibit doesn't show this. What Sherry Jacobus did was retweeted this tweet.
Oh, it's a misuse as well.
This is a misuse of the internet.
Whew, that is I mean, look, this is tough, guys. In my many years as a jurist, I have not encountered very many that have been this close in what we're going to do here. I appreciate both takes immensely. I was inclined initially to go with the acquisition process because I think the acquisition process, there's an underlying nefarious part of it that I don't know to be true, but I find it absolutely appalling. But to just out and out say that the former president was committing an act of treason by exposing American assets overseas can't be diminished. And like there's what he's doing is ridiculous and hilarious. What she's doing could get you committed.
Yeah.
It could, like, you should. We are like these SSRIs should sponsor the King of the Hill after you get shit like that. That is just wild, and for that reason, Sherrod Jacobus wins the game of King of the Hill.
Outstanding. I mean, what a match.
I have no complaints. It was an incredible tweet, Ashbrook, well deserved. victory, and
Well fought.
it is what
Well
it is.
fought, well fought as always. A great king of the hill. You guys ready for some variety?
Yes, sure.
I fucking love this variety because it's like bread and butter stuff, and you'll understand very quickly where we're going with this. The chunkiest of chunks face off in Alaska's Fat Bear Week.
Yes,
go.
yes, yes.
Fat bear.
It's what we love. It's
Can
a
I- can I get-
contest, and it's animal news.
Can I get a fat?
Fat bear.
That's what I'm looking for. The old fat bear. An Alaska National Park's yearly celebration of the beefy brown and bristly is getting underway. This is according to AP News.
Good
by the way.
alliteration.
Yeah, is getting underway with some of the chunkiest bears on the planet fatten up for their winter slumber. Fat Bear Week doesn't officially start at the Katami National Park and Preserve until October 2, when fans begin voting for their favorite ursine behemoth. What's an ursine?
Ursine's like the bears.
Yeah.
You can't just call it a fucking bear?
Yeah, I mean,
They're just trying to be cute.
trying to be cute.
That's too
It's
much.
a journal, man. They try to have a thesaurus so they sound smart.
It's too much. I'm just going to lob that in. It's too much. A behemoth, tournament-style brackets. So they're doing basically what we do with
Yeah.
Hack Madness, but they're doing it for fat bears. And so evidently what they do here is they're taking pictures of various bears that inhabit their area, and they're having people vote on like what's the fattest bear. The annual contest, which drew more than 1.3 million votes last year, is a way to celebrate the resiliency of 2,200 brown bears that live in the preserve and Alaska Peninsula. Okay, so here's some of the nominees.
Yeah, we got to get a look at these bears.
Graphic 3. Graphic 3 will show 806 Junior and 909 Junior.
Well fed.
Left to right across your radio
And
dial.
here's something. So I've been to Alaska, and I've actually seen not close, but these bears. I wish they had taken these photos with them like next to something so you can get the scale.
There's no scale.
Those things are like the size of a tank.
They're like
they
houses.
Are enormous.
Yeah, but like 909 Junior there. Can we put that graphic back up there for a second? 909 Junior, which I'm assuming is on the right.
Yeah.
Looks like a more full bear. Like
Yeah.
that bear does CrossFit. Like that's a
I
full
don't like
workout.
my bear.
Just- yeah,
I don't like my bear having definition in their back like
Yeah,
the one
yeah, so
that
that's-
is 806 Junior.
806 Junior has to get on that rowing machine or like do some lap pulls or something. The shoulders, they look a little gaunt.
They do.
But the other one looks like it just ate a hiker.
Yeah. Yeah.
A well-fed hiker.
So all of this for you OG Ruthless listeners will harken back to Hank the Tank.
Yeah.
And Hank was terrorizing the upper northwest of this country for many months, robbing people. And then he had a series of underlings who would rob things. And he was on the lam. And there was a reward out for Hank the Tank because he ran this entire circuit of thieving huge bears. And they claimed at one point to get a hold of Hank the Tank and relocate him, right? Which brings our next piece of this, which is the boss. One of the biggest, baddest grizzly bears in Banff was captured in a new series of photos. Unclear if the boss is able to compete, but compared to 806 Junior and 909 Junior, this situation is a very different one.
Yeah.
And I want to get into the context of it in a minute, but look at graphic 4.
Okay, that is a huge bear.
This-
I mean, like,
Is a huge bear. And if you look very closely, there are scars on the boss. And according to CBC, he's known as the boss due to his size and distinctive ears. The boss is regarded as being the most dominant grizzly found in Banff National Park,
Yeah.
weighing in somewhere between 650 and 700 pounds.
this factoid is insane. It says he's eaten a black bear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
He even once brushed off being struck by a train.
Yes.
But still uses the railways for travel and fortune. He's like,
Still uses
he's like, I run the rails, not the train.
I run the rails. I run the wheel.
Get out of my way, Mayor Pete.
So this gets back to my setup. That's definitely Hank, right?
It's got to be.
It's like
It's
witness
gotta be.
protection Hank. They've renamed as the boss and put him in Banff.
That's the thing. They're like, we'll send him to Alaska. He can't run his criminal enterprise there. Now this guy's knocking off trains. He's like Billy the Kid. He just got worse.
I mean, this is a dominant male grizzly, and they have DNA results that show the boss has sired the majority of cubs in Bow Valley, Banff.
Well, I mean, like, look, I mean, that is the sort of quantitative metric that we need, I think, to declare our champion of the chunky bears.
Yeah.
It's like when you've established that level of dominance that you are the breeding pool.
Oh,
not to mention the fact you're the only one with a name. These guys just get numbers.
They get numbers. It's 806 Jr. versus the boss.
I don't think it's a competition.
This
I
guy's
think
like
it's the boss.
The Genghis Khan of bears.
Yes.
This is
He's taken over land, and it's all his kids now.
And to be clear, we see you, Hank.
Yeah.
We see you.
We know it's you.
We know it's you. We know you're up there. Siring 50 plus one in any pop. I mean, look, if you're in the middle of a national forest and you've gotten the majority, it's like being in Omaha and having like half the kids being yours. That's dominant stuff.
Why they call him the boss?
That's the boss. That is the boss. Eating
Yeah.
black bears, running the rails.
Well, look, if anybody's in the market for a bear cub, I would just say this is like the equivalent of getting, a horse who was sired by Secretariat.
Yeah.
If anybody's in the market for a bear cub.
Yeah.
In the market.
Just in the market.
Yeah. Well, don't try to put it in make him a rug because the boss doesn't do that.
Yeah.
He doesn't do rugs.
No, you'll end up with like one of those trains.
Just flipping the caboose off the back end of that sucker. All right, so we're going to go to our interview. You guys, I waited around for all the right reasons. You're going to love this situation. He is perhaps the difference between a Democratic and Republican majority in the United States Senate. If you want Donald Trump to be able to do anything, that means confirming his own cabinet. You got to support guys like this, but after this interview, you're not going to have any more questions. Bernie Moreno. So, look, in an effort to provide our audience a little information about all the things that matter coming up in the November election, we do a lot of candidate interviews. Hard-pressed to remember one when we did the first one that was as easy and as fun and, like, immediately somebody you wanted to have back more than our current guest, Bernie Moreno. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I mean, look, we had you on before. You were going to run for Senate. You're going to win this big race in Ohio against, what was seen as a very formidable Sherrod Brown, entrenched career politician in Ohio. What is it, 8 months, 9 months later, all of a sudden you're back here. Looks like you have a real shot here.
I know. Sometimes I come to D.C. and I'm here for 2 or 3 days and I go, oof.
Yeah.
What have I done?
Examining the decision-making tree that led you to this point.
The good news is you met my wife and she said she's all in for 2 terms. She said a third term is with a second wife. So this is going to be term limits. Term limits for sure.
Familial
she wanted me to get
imposed.
that out of the way at the beginning, by the way.
To be clear, this is not constitutional. It's familial.
Yes.
There's an imposed term limit here.
Yes.
But listen, Bernie, you've been running a hell of a race. And I think what's happened over the summer, people were sort of shortchanging you. Sherrod Brown had these sort of artificially high numbers because he was an entrenched incumbent. Everybody recognized his name. He hadn't really taken any heat in the last 18 years, basically. I mean, this is a career politician, if there ever was one. You started prosecuting this case, and in a post-Labor Day environment, these things are moving fast, and you're in a really good position at this point.
Yeah, and we got to remember when I launched my campaign, my name ID around the state was 4%. With a 4% margin of error.
Right.
So there was a chance nobody knew who I was. So we got through a primary. We did pretty well. We won all 88 counties. We beat two good guys, two formidable opponents. We brought the entire party together, but we didn't have money. I mean, $55 million was spent in the primary. Part of the problem with Ohio primaries, right? It's a expensive
nomination worth having, so everybody throws everything they've got at it, and consequently, you come out of a primary having to start over again.
Oh yeah, so we were flat broke. Sherrod had a ton of money, so he did what we predicted he'd do. He went on TV big. We were down anywhere between 5, maybe 8 points. There was one poll that we were down 11. How do I know that? Every one of my friends sent it to me. Thank you. Thank you for sending me this poll.
Hey, did you see
I
this?
really appreciate this.
Those are good friends, though.
Good friends.
Everybody
Love
needs
them.
you need some locker room material from time to time, you know.
Or make sure you didn't miss this one. Got it, thank you.
Thanks. No, I'm not following particularly closely. Thank you.
Exactly. Is this what's going on? No idea. But now through the summer, he spent a ton of money, over $50 million.
Jeez.
Thanks to Senate Leadership Fund and One Nation, they spent some money, and we closed the gap, and then we started advertising.
Yeah.
I'd say that we opened a can of whoop ass on Sherrod Brown about 2.5 weeks ago, and now we have polling that has us up too. The reality is, though, that doesn't change what I'm going to do every day. I'm still going to work all day, every day. I'm still going to go to every corner of Ohio. You know, having sold my businesses and having grown kids allows me to do this all day, every day.
Yeah, it's
you know,
unique.
we do 4 or 5 events a day. Sherrod may do 4 events a month.
Yeah.
It's not his shtick. He's feeling like an incumbent that doesn't have to work hard. He has these very curated events, invitation only, highly screened.
I saw him in the American Lounge last week, reading the paper.
Yeah,
Kinda hanging out.
Well, he's never had to do it. I mean, he's never been pressed against somebody the way that you are taking it to him. I mean, you're hitting every county, 88 counties in Ohio, all corners of the state, and this guy has lived a charmed life, and you're bringing that to an end.
Yeah, I mean, we go, for example, in Jackson County, they have an Apple Fest. It's 5 hours there, right? You spend 5 hours meeting 100,000 people. We're being exposed to 100,000 people. Sherrod hasn't been there in probably 2 decades.
It's wild.
And it just shows you the guy's just lost interest in actually representing Ohio.
Yeah.
He doesn't go to county fairs. I think I've been to 80.
Wow.
He just doesn't do the retail politics anymore because in his mind, he's this very important United States senator. So I don't have to do that anymore. The people should just reelect me because I'm a senator. And that attitude does come across. So I'll go every county fair. I go right up to the Democrat booth. I shake their hands, introduce myself, and I say, look, I appreciate you're engaged in politics. And just keep in mind, I'm here. Sherrod's not.
That's just so great.
I mean, the thing is, and this has been our bet, we've talked about this in the program, is that you're a hard guy to hate. You know, because of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look, in partisan politics, you get to a point where you know, if you're wearing a red jersey or a blue jersey, you automatically are just like, I don't like this person. Or anybody that's not like being paid to be a Republican or Democrat, Bernie shows up and you're like, he's doing it for the right reasons.
Well,
like,
and then also last time he came in here, I believe he brought in the aguardiente, whatever it was called.
No, aguardiente.
There we
It's
go.
all about rolling the R's.
Okay.
But see, now look, this is very important. So, there's 41 days left.
Okay.
As of right now.
Yeah.
I need everybody to have their faculties. So you have to have your faculties. Okay. So we need to hyper focus on the selection. So I brought you guys a little bit of Ohio.
Oh.
So instead of binging on a little bit of booze here and there, look, I got you guys some
Oh,
graders.
yes,
Graders.
graders.
Each one of them was personally crafted for you.
Oh, man.
Name on the name. You can pick out which one belongs to which one, depending on the name.
This is
you guys
so
can decide.
fantastic.
You can decide who's vanilla bean and who's double chocolate.
Smash, you got your ice cream.
No, I'm taking chocolate chip. This is a little taste of home.
It is.
I remember the first time I ever had
here we go.
chocolate chip ice cream.
Here we go.
With my father at a place called the Hamiltonian, Hamilton, Ohio.
I see
And
what you've
you
done.
can't be graders.
You
It's the
really
best ice cream in the world.
You really can. It's the one point of agreement that we'll have here. I usually have to hate on Ohio because I'm from Indiana, and I have to hate on Skyline Chili, but I won't. I cannot.
You
hate
can't.
on Graders. It
You
is
actually
some of the
can't.
best ice
It
cream
is.
out there.
And here's the thing, like I don't know where you brought this from, but frozen solid, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's not easy. There's some logistical challenges to make this all happen today.
Appreciate it.
But just know that when you think I need a drink, just have a little ice cream. I need you guys focused. I need you guys focused for the next 41 days.
That's a
All
challenge.
right?
We'll accept it.
That is really well done. Well,
Absolutely.
I'm excited.
We got to turn over a new leaf here for 41 days. Stay on message. Stay sharp.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, right? 41 days.
I know.
This country is going to go in one direction or another.
Yeah.
It's wild because you look back to like the first election I voted was Bush 41. There was a contrast, obviously, between the two people running. One was, George H.W. Bush, and the other one was, Bill Clinton. So one had morals and and it was Clinton. But it wasn't a policy like 180.
Yeah.
This is a policy 180. I mean, Kamala Harris has a very dark vision for what America should be like.
No question.
And President Trump, by those standards, is actually a pretty moderate Republican.
Yeah.
You know, now, maybe his rhetoric, people will say, is bombastic, but which I don't think it is. I think he just speaks publicly the way he speaks privately. But his positions are pretty much common sense.
Well, look, it's the trick the Democrats pull, and your opponent is a perfect example of this, in that they talk reasonably, right? They sound like, yeah, you're just one of us, so you're just kind of hanging out. And then you go to the policy booth, and all of a sudden you get just insane stuff across the board. And so, I mean, it makes it difficult to campaign against because they're like, wow, he seems so reasonable. But then you look at what somebody like Sherrod Brown has done over the last, what is he? How long has he been in office, Smash?
50 years.
50.
Nixon was in the White House when he ran for the first time. Richard Nixon was in the White House. And by the way, this is the other thing that's interesting about Sherrod Brown. His whole shtick is fake. Yeah. So he pretends to be a working class guy. So how does he do that? Well, first thing he does is he takes his suit, gets it all wet, puts it in the dryer, and then puts it on. So the thing just looks like a mess, right? Then he takes his wife's blow dryer, messes up his hair, and then he Googles working class jobs, and he goes, I went to high school with the sons of carpenters and auto workers and steel layers.
That's
and
the last time you met a worker.
Right? And I want to say, you did go to school with them. They're the kids that beat you up. They weren't on your side, Sherrod. They went to work. You went to Yale. He majored in Russian studies. Like, you can't make this up, right? And then goes into elected office, and he's like, I'm for the working man. He has a little canary in the coal mine thing. The canary's pointing to him. Like, the canary's going like, help. Like, this guy's going to close coal mines. Stop this guy from doing this.
Well, that's the thing, is that Sherrod Brown is never one of those Democrats like a Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema or somebody where you're like actually wondering how they might vote on something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, every time there was a $4 trillion deal, a Green New Deal, everything else, like nobody worried about where Sherrod Brown was. They already knew. He'd spent 50 years codifying his position as a left-wing lunatic when it comes to legislating.
But his new commercials say he's bipartisan.
Oh,
he
yeah.
works with Republicans.
Yeah, no question.
He's very supportive of President Trump.
Oh, my God.
You sit there. But that's what's crazy
Two
about
impeachment
politics.
votes notwithstanding.
Two impeachment votes, calling him a racist, voting with him against him virtually every time it mattered.
Right.
But this is what's interesting about politics and business. I mean, if I advertise Mercedes for $99 a month and then no money down, you came in and go, what do you mean $999? You can't say it was a grammar error.
You wouldn't be selling.
When I meant 99, I meant 999. Because I would go to jail, rightfully so. But in politics, they can say and do anything they want.
It's remarkable.
It's pretty
right?
But Kamala Harris is the same way. I mean, this is a woman that was born as a 59-year-old on July 24th, 2024. She didn't exist. Mother Mary's got nothing on her. So here's this woman that was created out of thin air. And you think and go, wait, aren't you the same Democrats who said she was terrible and that's why you had to keep Biden? But they've actually, to their credit, they've built this persona that does not resemble the Kamala Harris who actually existed prior to July 24th.
Well, it doesn't appear like the people of Ohio are buying what she's selling.
No. President Trump, look, Ohio's Trump country. President Trump will do really well. He'll win between 8 to 12 points, maybe even more. He's very, very popular in Ohio for very good reason. It's all about bringing industry back. As you know, look, 6 of the wealthiest 14 cities in America used to be in Ohio. Dayton, Toledo, Youngstown, Lorain. These are incredibly prosperous cities. What happened? We gutted our industrial base, shipped it overseas. President Trump's going to bring that back. We're going to fix that. Starts with energy, by the way. We talked. You'll go do some grassroots meetings, and I'll do 200 people, and I'll say, how many of you drive an electric vehicle as your primary car? Not only does nobody raise their hand, because that's one thing. They look around the room. Who's the traitor? Who's the traitor? Right? So you tell them, hey, you have to, because Sherrod Brown said so. Buy an electric car within the next 5 or 6 years. They can't even wrap their head around that.
No, we always joke.
But everything bad that's happened to Ohio has happened while Sherrod Brown's 50-year career has had his hand on the helm, and there's no better contrast to that than a guy who created jobs for his entire career. I wonder if you could talk about your background a little bit more. I know we had you on before, but I think people would really be interested in hearing about how a businessman is now going to change things in Washington.
Sure. Well, first of all, I wasn't born here. I was born in Colombia, South America. Moved here when I was a kid. Became a citizen when I was 18. Got to Ohio about 20 years ago. Roger Penske's one of the greatest Americans alive today.
Yeah.
Sold me a dealership, gave me that opportunity. And it was a dealership that wasn't very big, wasn't selling a lot of cars. I took every cent I had to buy that dealership and build it up. I built 14 other dealerships over the next 10 years. We had about $1 billion in revenue. Did really well. And the reason we did well, by the way, is because we took exceptional care of my people. The people who worked for me, I'm very proud of 6 of the people who worked in that first dealership now run 6 different dealerships.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So we did really great job. They
Because
took
they're
great care
part
of
of
our
the
clients.
community, right? I mean, look, I remember when I was a kid, if you take good care of your people at a car dealership, those people are part of your community. You go buy from your friends and neighbors. And
Absolutely.
like it just becomes sort of a microcosm of what you're trying to do now.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sherrod Brown knocks me as being a car dealer. What's interesting is when you go out and buy a car, think about it, you're actually having to trust somebody.
There's a trust element.
Trust factor, right?
Yeah.
That's different than a politician. So you have to earn that trust. And if you don't, they're just going to find somebody
You'll
else.
go somewhere else
The difference
quick.
in politics is you can't find a different state to represent you or a different county or a different country, right? You have to kind of work with what you've got. So did that, then started a technology company. Using blockchain as the underlying tech. We really, obviously, very deep in the crypto space. My opponent, obviously, is very anti-crypto.
Do you think he gets that at all?
No. Look, if you went to a baseball game and threw out a ball, whoever catches that ball is more qualified than Sherrod Brown to regulate crypto. Let me just get that straight. Like, literally, man on the street, grab him. Regulate crypto. You're more qualified than Sherrod Brown.
Nice to know
He
he's
just
got his
has no
hand on
idea.
the wheel, though.
No, yeah, but he just goes to Elizabeth Warren and goes, "Listen, Liz, tell me what to say. Is this bad or good? I have no idea." The guy's trying to figure out email. I mean, here's a guy reading the newspaper at the airport lounge.
Yeah.
It's like he's the guy because the rest of us obviously read it on our phones, right? He's trying to flip the page on his phone. He can't figure it out. But we did that. Look, I'm running for one simple reason. The greatest gift I've ever gotten in my life was my parents bringing me to this country. And so you either do something to save this country and work to get this country back on track, or don't complain about it. So that's why I'm doing it. It's not the thing I thought I would do. It's not always so much fun in the sense that you get attacked in a way that's just mercilessly.
You get like immediately 35% of the population hating you.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know you. They've never met you, but they hate you. Yeah. And so, of course, being supported by President Trump, you're called an extremist. There's sometimes I think, man, can you imagine if I had run as a Democrat, right?
Yeah.
The New York Times would have a front page
Oh, yeah.
expose. Hispanic immigrant Bernie Moreno sacrifices to save America. Right? Rose petals.
Front page.
Rose petals down Fifth Avenue. Right? I mean, Oprah would hug me. I mean, it'd be amazing. Right? Now, I run as a
Clooney
No, George Clooney would be my BFF. We'd be like, George, where do you want to go? I don't know. Where do you want to hang out, man? But now I'm running with Trump support, so it's Trump-backed MAGA extremists trying to take away your rights.
It's wild.
I mean, it's wild. And the media is so good at being organized. So when the Sherrod Brown campaign wants to attack you on something, within minutes the entire machine.
It's crazy, right?
It's unbelievable.
It's funny because we've been in this industry for a long time, and so it's sort of baked in our cynicism and how we approach all of these things. But for somebody like you who's relatively new to the scene, first time on a general election statewide ballot, it's got to be jarring. You're like, wait, hold on. They sent out a press release, and now I've got every American publication in the country that is like, hey, Bernie, what can you comment on the press release?
Exactly.
You're like, what? Like, I'm standing on my head over here.
Yeah, why did you kill that nun when you were 12? I swear, I didn't even know the nun. But they do. Well, as you know how this works. Now I've kind of figured it out. The Democrats write the news story.
Yeah.
They then feed it to a reporter, and then they do a commercial pointing to the reporter's story as fact.
Yeah.
We didn't say this. The New York Times said it. It must be true.
Right.
And it's this incredibly sophisticated machine. One of the things that we need to do better as Republicans, we need to do better on messaging. I think you have people like Senator Tom Cotton, obviously
God, he's been
biased,
killing it out there.
but Senator J.D. Vance does an amazing job.
So does he.
They're so good at staying on message, fighting back. I think that's critical. And also, let's have each other's backs.
Yeah.
I think for sport, Republicans like to crap on each other. I don't get that coming from the business world. We can have disagreements, by the way. Totally have disagreements. But let's do that in private.
Yep.
And then, beat each other up privately, but when we go forward, let's find points of agreement and not let the Democrats divide us.
Sounds like a guy who might be able to legislate and get some things done.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Wouldn't that be something?
That'd be something.
We actually have
I don't want
candidates.
to ruin you. Lobbyists listening going, this is horrifying.
Shit, he might work with people. Oh my God. What do we do?
We need bad bills. Otherwise, got to eat.
Yeah. So what do you think as you're kind of hitting the home stretch here? Obviously you're going to continue doing everything as you said, but what's the one or two things that you think are still misconceptions about the way that Sherrod Brown is representing Ohio?
So he's not for the working man, and so that's actually the debate right now between Democrats and Republicans. Who actually cares about our middle class? Who's going to fight for the middle class? Who's going to make it so you can have a good middle class life? Which I describe as my father-in-law. My father-in-law graduated from high school, went to work at U.S. Steel, worked there almost his entire life, was able to raise 3 kids in a safe community with good schools, and he's retired debt-free.
Yeah.
That's the American dream. That's what doesn't exist in other countries. So who's going to fight for that? It's certainly not Sherrod Brown and Kamala Harris.
Right.
They destroy the middle class. They want all of those people dependent on the government because ultimately they think they're smarter than the people are. That's the underpinning of the philosophy. So that's what you can't be for unlimited illegal immigration and be for the working man. It hurts them in terms of home prices, rental prices, food prices, wages. You can't be for the Green New Deal and be for the working man, right? Everybody should buy a Tesla for $100,000.
We've always joked about what it's like to roll up on a construction site and one guy rolls in. Like, how do you think his day is going to go?
A golf cart. But believe me, the guy buying the F-150 Lightning is not the Marlboro Man. That is not who's buying that car. But there's this idea that everybody should drive electric cars because we told you so. But that's not what people want. And that's the fundamental American principle, right? Isn't it that we get to choose our lives? Even if we make bad decisions.
Yeah.
We get to make bad decisions because we made that decision. And by the way, typically those bad decisions are not actually bad decisions.
Yeah.
That's just the people judging us think it is. So I think that's what's at stake. Look, we have to solve this border. We have to solve a border. This is totally incredible.
And he's trying to futz around with that.
Oh, listen, this guy said the border wall is racist. The border wall is stupid. It's a right-wing conspiracy theory that there's a problem at the border. This is crazy. These people are tinfoil. Springfield is a good example of what's going on in Springfield. They'll say there's nobody eating a cat or a dog. Nobody's ever eaten a cat or a dog in Springfield, so the entire story is fake. The issue isn't the cat or the dog. The issue is that you have a town of 52,000 people that has 20 to 25,000 Haitians living there. They're not 25,000 new jobs. If there were 25,000 new jobs in Springfield, Ohio, this would be the biggest news story in the world. Yeah. You have maybe a couple hundred jobs, and you have thousands of people that are now dependent on our social safety net. That's crazy. And on top of that, Sherrod Brown voted against stopping the flights. You know about the flights.
Yeah.
The flights is one of those stories that you can't think is real because you know what it costs. If the 4 of us said, hey, listen, after this interview, let's jump in a private jet and go to the Caribbean, you're talking about $50,000, $60,000.
Right.
Not cheap. We've flown in hundreds of thousands of people on private jets. Yeah. And then when they get here, they're not engineers and lawyers and doctors. These are people who are totally and completely dependent on our social safety net.
When they're going to places like Springfield that didn't have the infrastructure to support them in the first place.
The federal government's not sending them to Martha's Vineyard.
They're
not sending them to where the rich
live.
They don't want to send them to where the rich libs live because they think they can run over people in central Ohio. And it's one of the worst things about our federal government right now is that they think they can just plow right over people who don't have a voice.
And it's racist if you say anything.
Yeah, the media is just going to be right there with them, just like, you don't matter. And then somebody in Springfield's like, hey, wait a minute, what gives? And they're like, no, shut up. You're not allowed to have a voice.
I mean, why don't we take those Haitians and put them in the New York Times newsroom and they can take their jobs.
Right.
And then they might have a different opinion of that sort of thing.
Well, you said it right. Martha's Vineyard, 80-90% of those homes are empty right now. You could house 25,000 Haitians. Fill them up, right? I mean, if you could put 16 in a 2-bedroom house in Springfield, imagine what you could put in Obama's house. I mean, it'd be a whole village. It takes a village, right? But I think what it comes down to, and it's interesting, is you see it in a retail business sometimes when you get worn out by clients. I think the politicians that have been here their whole lives start hating their voters. And so they'll look at it and go, we just don't like our voters very much. So they're willing to help Haitians and foreign nationals in foreign countries. But when it comes to helping Americans, like, I don't really like them very much. And that mentality is what you see in a guy like a Sherrod Brown. They've been worn down. It's, I think, a psychological thing. I saw it when we would buy underperforming dealerships. Is you talk to the people and they'd say, oh, that customer's a jerk, or that guy's a... You know who pays the bills, right? Like, I don't pay the bills. I'm a pass-through. The guy pays the dealership, I pay you. The customer is the important one. But it's the same way with the voters. Like, why would you pass $60 billion for Ukraine in 24 hours, but you can't pass $2 billion for border security in 3.5 years? And again, I'm not knocking Ukraine or saying one versus the other. I'm saying priorities.
Right.
What should come first?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen to America that we have politicians that put America's interests first. I think when President Trump said that, it was a shocking concept, but that's what resonates with the grassroots, because it's not about Trump. It's about the movement that he started. And that's what the left doesn't understand. They can try to kill the man, literally. They're not going to kill the movement. I think people are now demanding elected leaders that will always vote in the interest of the United States first. Doesn't mean only, by the way. Doesn't mean only. It's to say, listen, we're going to pretend the rest of the world doesn't exist. That's silly. But let's prioritize the interest of the United States.
Yeah, no, it's a good message. So, look, we have a fair number of people in Ohio that listen to the program. What do they do to get involved?
Yeah, my wife among them, by the way. She knows way too much about your personal movements, by the way. I told her I was coming. She goes, is he back on vacation? I'm like, how would you know that?
These guys.
Come on. Like, I'm starting to get a little suspicious. But she campaigns with me every day. So I'm not completely worried. But
I want your wife to know, I was at a funeral, and these guys started...
Hold on. We didn't do it. Smug did it.
Smug did it.
Well, okay.
And he's not here, by the way. Smug, who is not
Who's
here.
not here? Who's not here?
Yeah,
Shocker. Point out.
Yes, you can. There's no days off between now and the election.
Yeah.
The Ruthless Variety Program. We're going to stand our post.
Yeah, it just you know how disturbing it is to wake up usually around 6:45 in the morning, and the first thing I hear is your voice. Just want you to know at what level of disturbance that is for me. So in fact, I've asked my wife, can you play the Megyn Kelly podcast first?
I understand that. My wife feels the same way.
No offense.
None taken.
Not taken whatsoever.
But no, what they can do is, look, a couple of things. Number one, go on BernieMoreno.com. Volunteer, put up a yard sign, make some phone calls, knock on some doors. We're knocking on 150,000 doors a week right now. So we have the largest door knocking operation ever in Ohio history. Really proud of that. Throw in a few bucks, it helps. But also, please, if you're listening, vote early.
Yeah.
Go vote on October 8th. And if you're listening carefully, vote 11 times. So here's what that means. Before you edit this out, here's what that means.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
vote yourself. Bring 10 people with you over the next 4 weeks to the polling booth. Don't say, oh, yeah, I'm going to vote. No, why don't we do this? Jump in my car. I'm going to go drive you to the Board of Elections. Go bank that vote. We will be the first race called on 6 weeks from yesterday if we do this right. Because if Sherrod Brown's within a 10 or 15-point margin of me on early voting, this race is over. This race can be called by 8 p.m. Eastern time. Yep. The rest of the evening can be focused on a presidential. We know we have the Senate. Yep. So that happens in Ohio. It's a special responsibility. So in Ohio, vote early. Nobody's confused. If you're going to vote for Donald J. Trump, you're going to vote for Donald J. Trump. And if you're going to vote for me, you're going to vote for me. Just do that on October 8th as soon as possible.
It's just a great message. Thank you for doing it. I'm glad that you're doing it. I hope more candidates do that. That's exactly the formula that we need to win. BernieMoreno.com.
BernieMoreno.com. That's it.
All right. Well, we'll all go there, and we are watching every single day. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for running. Let's go bring this one home, huh?
Okay, boys. No more booze the rest of the next 41 days.
Just ice cream.
Just ice cream. Just ice cream.
Okay. All right. Well,
you'll be a little bit bigger in 41 days, but so much healthier.
You don't know how much they drink, though. So,
you may be thinner.
You're the man. Thank you for coming.
You guys.
Appreciate it. I mean, he is so good.
Yeah.
This guy is the perfect matchup for Sherrod Brown, who's been there for 50 years. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
50 years?
50 years. Nixon?
Yeah.
He first ran for office under a Nixon administration.
Unbelievable.
I mean, it is incredible. But I also will say we have a lot of candidates. I prefaced this at the top of the interview. We have a lot of candidates come through here. Most of them are running for the right reasons. All of them have different skill sets. This is as easy to talk to guy as you're ever going to have. I mean, he is not only skilled, because that sends the wrong message in that he's like, somehow trying to give you answers that he doesn't believe. That's not Bernie at all. But he just has the depth and interest in why people want to vote for representation. You just don't see. It's not common. It's not common. Like, he relates to people at an individual level, whether you're in Youngstown, Ohio, or Cincinnati, or Cleveland. And they're all very different reasons for why it is that you're voting. But he innately understands it and gives you a good argument. And you heard that here. I mean, he's just good.
He's great at it.
Yeah.
The thing to me, when I've spoken with him last time he was here, it becomes immediately clear the reason he's running and the reason he comes off so well when you talk to him is because he actually cares about people and he actually listens.
Yeah, it's not a surprise he was as successful in business as
Which,
he
by the way,
was.
shouldn't go unnoted that a
Right.
guy's got a great life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no need to go get into public service where like 40% of the population is automatically going to hate you for no matter what. I mean, there's not a liberal organization in Ohio you couldn't drop him into and then being like, oh, he's a pretty good guy.
Yeah, like,
Unless he's running for office.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless he's running for office, which he's now put himself in that situation because he wants to do the best thing for Ohio and our country. I applaud him for it. And for those of you who have capacity to do something, go to BernieMoreno.com, volunteer, put up a yard sign or something if you're in Ohio. Toss him a couple bucks if you got some extra, because Lord knows they're throwing the absolute toolkit at this guy.
I know of a few very good yard sign locations in Southwest Ohio. It's going to be a very important part of the vote. We got to run it up down there.
And he brought us some ice cream.
He did. Graders.
Yeah.
Cincinnati favorite.
And he wants you guys to stay sharp.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is we're right here. It's October. Election day's right here.
So remember, our question of the day is, will what Iran is doing in the various assassination attempts and knowing what we know now have a material impact on this election? I think it does. But I'd like to get what your thoughts are. Are we just like post-partisan to the point where we don't care about a state sponsor of terrorism actively threatening a nominee regardless of party? I just don't believe, I hope that's not the case. But I'd be very interested to hear what you guys have to say. You got to like and subscribe in order to do it, though. So get on that YouTube channel. And if you're listening only, there's an awful lot of people working in Congress right now that are listen only guys. If you're doing that, wherever you get your podcast, all you need to do is comment, give us a couple 5 stars, and we'll be on our way. With that, fellas, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Thank you so much to AFP, and thank you so much to Bernie Moreno, and thank you so much to the Minions for listening. So, until next time, Minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.